All right, guys, before I make some of you really mad, let's talk about some of the benefits that boxing offers for a self-defense scenario. First and foremost, knocking someone out is super cool. You can end a fight very quickly. Also, the movement, the footwork, the head movement could potentially help you deal with multiple attackers. It can help you develop good distance management and staying away from a potential attacker. And it's great exercise. Let's say someone attacks me. Boom, and I knock them out. And it was really cool because knockouts are cool, but they fall, they hit their head on the ground. Maybe they're in a coma, maybe they have brain damage, maybe they die. I can't have that as my only option for every self-defense scenario. What if it's my drunk uncle at a party and I just need to make him chill, get him out of the scenario, right? If my only tool is my hands, boxing, I'm not gonna beat up my drunk uncle just because that's the only thing I know how to do, right? Boxing's very one-dimensional. It doesn't address the other ranges of fighting. And by other ranges, I mean, we have our boxing range, our punching range. We have our kicking range, which is a little further. We have our clinch, which is a little closer. And we have grappling, right? Standing grappling and ground grappling. So there's a lot involved in a fight or a self-defense scenario that boxing just doesn't address at all, right? When I'm boxing, I'm punching and I'm at punching range. Maybe I can get in and throw some short shots, but we're not dealing with the clinch at all. Like in boxing, when somebody grabs you around the waist, they grab you on the head, instantly that referee's in there, he's breaking you up, okay? So boxing as it is has no tools to deal with kicks, to deal with takedowns, or to deal with just somebody just being close and hugging you and clinching you, maybe striking you or taking you down from there. Its skill set is just very limited as far as self-defense as a whole goes. Also looking at self-defense, sometimes weapons come into play, right? Guns and knives. Now, I'm not saying it's ever a great idea to go hands-on with stuff like that, but in the scenario I'm forced to defend myself against a knife, punching probably isn't the best idea. If you've ever watched any kind of training on knife self-defense, it's always a grabbing scenario. It's a grappling. I'm controlling the arm. I'm controlling the body. Same thing with guns. Somebody has a gun at close range. I want to get in and grab that as opposed to trying to punch it out while, dodging bullets. It just doesn't work that well. Man, there is always, and I know people just get so mad about this, but there's always a lucky punch. You can be a very skilled striker and just, you've been practicing for years. You've got fights under your belt and you get into an altercation with somebody that just doesn't even know what they're doing and their eyes are closed and they're swinging wildly. And all of a sudden, this big old fist just comes out of nowhere. You didn't see it. And it lands. And you, just like anyone else, can get knocked out. That's a lucky punch. It's when somebody with way less skill lands something that they probably just shouldn't have landed on somebody more skilled than them. And it happens all the time. I actually have a friend, I'm not going to say his name, but at one point he held a world title in boxing and one in kickboxing. One of the best strikers I've ever known, ever worked with. And he gets in a street altercation. Guy flips a cigarette in his car, they have words, they pull over, they go fisticuffs. This guy throws a punch. My buddy, being the good striker he is, barely slips it, right? The guy missed. The punch completely missed. But what happened was he had a giant wristwatch on. This guy's wristwatch cuts my friend's forehead and he starts bleeding. He's bleeding into his eyes and he's trying to clean himself up while this other guy is piecing him apart. He's throwing punches. The other guy's moving, ding, 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 hitting him. He's turning, he's punching, he's fighting completely blind. Now, according to his story, the guy may have had some boxing experience, but that first lucky punch that didn't even land completely changed what would have been the outcome of my friend getting into an altercation with a smaller, much older man who probably did not have his years of competitive boxing and kickboxing experience. So just looking at sheer numbers, there are not a lot of boxing gyms around anywhere you go. But what there are martial arts schools all over the place, people learning how to kick and elbow and knee, and there's a wrestling program in almost every single high school. Boxing doesn't deal with wrestling, right? It doesn't deal with the kicking. Now, I'm not saying a punch doesn't work on somebody, but you have a larger number of people learning how to take people to the ground and smash them into the ground than you do people boxing. Or even the ability to go out and learn how to box effectively just because the numbers aren't there. It's hard to find a good boxing gym, but every high school has some kind of wrestling team. And in general, you're not going to be able just to knock out the wrestler, right? We talk about boxing, we're learning to box against boxers. We're used to slipping and dodging and moving and the footwork of punches coming at us. But when someone changes their level and dives at the legs, I'm trying to punch down. I'm dealing with something I've never dealt with before as a boxer. So the likelihood of you landing that one shot before they get in, and also people can shoot from further away than you can punch, right? So they're out of striking range, and then they shoot and they get in and they're close. And you might land one, you might land two, but by the time they're in that grappling range, whether it be a clinch or they're just taking you down, your strikes are obsolete at this point. They're not going to work effectively. If you're on your back on the ground, definitely your punching is out the window. Real quick, let's talk about like what makes for a powerful and effective strike, okay? It's the ability to turn my hips and to move my body as a whole, okay? I'm not typically just punching with my arms. There's not a lot of power here. So when I'm throwing my jab, I'm leaning, my body turns. I'm throwing my cross, my hips are turning. My hooks, my hips are turning. So powerful punching comes from my entire body, okay? When I'm in a grappling scenario and I have somebody around my hips and they're grabbing me, trying to break me down backwards, I've lost the ability to turn my whole body, okay? If I'm on the ground, my back's on the ground, I can no longer turn and develop that power to hurt somebody. Ryan here, he's like 6'6". He's way taller than me. He's got a very long range. I'm not even that far away from him. He's not hitting me, okay? So yeah, I can throw a kick or something, but if I'm shooting, if I'm a wrestler, I can shoot from way out here, boom, well before he can land that punch. All I have to do is see him move, boom, and I'm in. It doesn't take much at all. Just one quick shot, and I change that range. He's completely out of his element once we make that close contact. So I'm here, he wants to throw punches. If I allow him to use his hips and use his body, boom, this is where there's danger. When I get in, and I'm in here and I'm controlling his hips, even if he wants to land a few punches, there's not a lot of power, but also I'm not just gonna eat that punch. If he starts swinging, boom, I can always grab and control, okay? So now we're in here. He doesn't have the power to hurt me, right? Now I can take him down, easy takedown, we're on the mat. From here, this is exactly what I'm talking about. He can no longer turn his body. He can't rotate and develop power from here, okay? Where I can. If I really need to, boom. Plus, I've got gravity on my side. He's fighting against gravity. If he's able to hit me, it's not powerful and I can roll with it. But if I hit him, his head's on that concrete, boom, he's got nowhere to go. If his head comes up, okay? I run him like a speed bag. Another factor we see pretty commonly in mixed martial arts is broken hands, right? So as a boxer who's training boxing all the time, we wrap our hands, we put on these big like 12 to 16 to 18 ounce gloves sometimes. Typically we're hitting mitts, we're hitting bags, we're hitting padded objects, right? Even when we're sparring, usually we got headgear on and stuff. So we're hitting soft things. When you take away all the padding, these are some of the smallest bones in our body. And we're striking a hard surface, usually somebody's skull. Sometimes you hit an elbow. Those hands break. There's even the boxer's fracture where you break that pinky. I mean, it has a name named after boxers breaking their hands, right? So punching somebody in the head, even if I'm aiming at like their jaw, still a hard bone, but I miss just a little bit, ding, hit the top of somebody's head, I can very easily break my hand or hands. So that sucks. And that takes you out of the fight. That takes away your weapons. Even if you want to punch continuously with a broken hand, number one, it hurts. You're probably not going to hit as hard. And then number two, that sucks. And that's got some long-term effects. And even if you win the fight, did you really win the fight? Another serious concern with training only boxing and doing it all the time are the long-term effects on our body, mostly our brain, our neck, CTE is very common with people in all combat sports that take a lot of shots to the head. And just having your neck rattled all the time, like there can come a lot of brain damage, issues with the neck, issues with soft tissue, broken noses, orbital sockets, jaws, things like that, other than just our hands, right? So a lifetime of training in a martial art, if we want to call it that, or a combat sport where I'm only getting punched in the face. And yes, I know there's body shots, but let's be serious, 90% of all punches are right to the dome. Like we're getting hit in the head for decades. There's probably going to be a point where you're not going to be able to defend yourself because you can't walk upright. Oftentimes is the case, not always, but oftentimes, when we're in a boxing gym, especially a competitive boxing gym, we tend to train with people our size, within our weight class or close. We don't tend to have a lot of heavyweights sparring lightweights. But in a self-defense scenario, man, oftentimes, I'm kind of a little guy myself. I've found that it's usually the great big guy that goes, eeny, meeny, miny, I'm going to fight the little guy, right? Because guys that start fights, they don't want to fight the big guys. They're going to pick the smallest, weakest looking guy in the room and attack them. So if I'm in a self-defense scenario where I only have my hands and I'm outweighed by 100, 150 pounds maybe, I'm probably not going to be able to hit hard enough to knock out this giant, right? And yeah, that's going to suck no matter what system of self-defense I'm using. But ultimately, having some other options, especially if I'm getting taken down and I'm being squished by a bigger person, or just wanting to not stand and slug it out, where this guy might be able to knock me out in one punch and it's going to take me 20 or 30 before I've even rocked him. The size differential there is not as common in training boxing as it is in other forms of self-defense. Please don't be mistaken. This is not me ragging on boxing in any way. I'm simply pointing out that boxing alone is not the most useful or effective form of self-defense. Self-defense holistically, we need to cover at least the 4 ranges of fighting, right? Kicking, punching, clinch, and grappling. So I would recommend boxing definitely for good hands. Probably some Muay Thai, some form of kickboxing, so we can throw some legs in there, and the clinch. And then wrestling. Wrestling controls where the match goes, right? Or the fight goes. I can take a person down, but also I'm able to stay on my feet if I need to. And then jiu-jitsu. Obviously, I'm always going to recommend jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu is where we can finish the fight. It's where we learn that dominant position on the ground. It's where we learn how to escape those inferior positions. And it's where we learn to finish people, break their arms, break their legs, choke them unconscious. And then I would suggest some form of learning how to disarm guns and knives. Now, hopefully you never have to encounter that type of scenario, and that type of training is dangerous, but it's not a bad idea to get something there. Obviously, maybe just be in good shape, have good cardio, so you can run, right? But overall, guys, if we're talking self-defense, boxing alone is not a perfect form of self-defense. It's not the best by any means. It's a great tool. It's a good part of it, but we also need to look at it and look at those 4 ranges: kicking, punching, clinch, and grappling.